Jason's here with us to share his pro-life journey and tremendous passion for life. He walks the pro-life talk. He's a father of 6 with 4 under the age of 5, including newborn Isabella. So let's give Jason Jones a warm welcome.
I just love that Florida accent. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It is a privilege to be here. And it's actually kind of a surprise. I work with Eduardo Verasti, the star of Bella. I hope you've all seen Bella. And you know, at Metanoia Films, when I check the mail, or the voicemail every day in the morning, the first thing I have to do is clear out all these speaking requests for Eduardo. But a couple of months ago, there was a request from, hi, this is David Bathan. I'm calling from Ave Maria, and the girls decided they want that hot hunk of a man to come give a talk for our club. I thought that was kind of strange that they'd want me instead of Eduardo. But, okay, Father, it's a joke, but when you laugh that hard, it hurts my feelings. I want to tell you a little bit about Eduardo, because you heard 500 babies were saved from Bella, but that we know of by name. But those 500 babies are really the fruit of the sacrifice of a young Latino actor who said, I'm never going to make a film again that objectifies women, offends my faith, or demeans Latino culture, and for 3 years he didn't work. And I remember when I first met Eduardo, I was in Mexico City. We were there for a meeting. I was actually consulting the PAN Party, and we were there for a meeting, and Congressman Chris Smith's wife, Marie Smith, said, Jason, you have to meet this Eduardo guy. He's really good looking. And that didn't motivate me to meet anybody. So she said, well, he's a big telenovela star. I said, what's a telenovela? She says, Mexican soap opera. That didn't excite me too much. He's really pro-life. So, okay, and he's the Brad Pitt of Latin America. Well, I'm the Chris Farley of Latin America, so I had to meet the guy. So I go downstairs, and I'm meeting Eduardo, and if you've met him, he's very passionately pro-life, and so in front of this Four Seasons Hotel in Mexico City talking, and all of a sudden he looks over my shoulder, and he says, Frater, run. And he starts running down the street, and I'm running after him. And I'm thinking we're about to be kidnapped, and I'm too afraid to look back. I don't know what's going on. We run down one street, we turn right, we run down another, he cuts the hotel, run another street, and I finally get the courage to look back. And I see a group of women running after us. I like to say us, you know. Running after us. And we finally jump into a cab, and we're out of breath. And I look at Eduardo and I say, friend, if you want to hang out with me, get used to it, because every day is just like this. But we've been running together ever since to promote life. But for me, my journey in the pro-life movement began long before that. I'm an unconventional person, maybe nowadays conventional in the pro-life movement. I was not raised Catholic. But my journey into the church, I was baptized and confirmed on August 6, 2003 into the Catholic Church. It began 21 years ago. I was 16 years old. It was a Saturday morning. It was 2 days before my 17th birthday. And it was the day after a football game. I was a football player, and I was lying in bed in that half awake, half asleep state, and I could smell the bacon coming from downstairs. It was starting to wake me up. And I heard feet coming up the stairs, and my door opened, and I thought it was my little sister. And someone climbed under my covers, and I pulled the covers back, and it was my girlfriend. And she had tears in her eyes, and she looked up at me, and she said, I'm pregnant. And that caught my attention, and I woke up. And we sat there that morning trying to figure out what we were going to do. And so what we decided was, on my birthday, I knew I could join the Army at 17 because a friend of mine had just joined. I would drop out of high school and go down to the recruiter's office and join the Army. And my girlfriend, for her part, she would wear baggy sweaters and take vitamins. That was our plan. We thought it was a pretty good plan. So that's what we did. I went to the principal's office, and I was last in my class out of 565 students. This is true. And so when I passed her the piece of paper to sign me out of school, I'd never seen anyone sign a piece of paper so fast in my life. She signed the piece of paper, and a few weeks later I was off to Fort Benning, Georgia. When my recruiter called, I'm sure there's some veterans in here, and so you know the drill. The recruiter called, he said, Jones, you're going to need a suitcase, and you need toothpaste, toothbrush, razor blade, 2 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of underwear. Okay, it's the problem. So I went all over my house. My mother was a single mom, and we had 5 kids. And I guess we didn't need a reason for a suitcase. And so I called the recruiter. I said, sir, we don't have a suitcase. What should I do? He said, use your pillowcase. So I went upstairs. My pillowcase was still my Scooby-Doo pillowcase. And so I went to my sister's room, strawberry shortcake. So I went with Scooby-Doo, filled the suitcase up, and then I realized, or the pillowcase up, I realized I don't shave yet. So I called the recruiter. I said, sir, I don't shave. Do I still need a razor blade? He said, you're going to learn how to follow instructions sooner or later. You might as well learn now before you go to basic training. Yes, you need a razor blade. So off I went to basic training with a Scooby-Doo pillowcase and a razor blade I couldn't use. I got to Fort Benning, Georgia, and my girlfriend, like girlfriends do, she sent me a lot of letters. And too many letters, really, because drill sergeants, you know, for every letter you get, you have to earn with push-ups, and sometimes 3, 4, 5 letters would come in at once. And she loved to bake, which was even worse, because the drill sergeants have an art of taking everything that should make you happy and using it to make you miserable. And so if your family sent you food, they would make you eat all of the food at once, and then run, and run, and run, until you gave the food back. So Katie loved to bake, and so I wrote Kitty a letter and said, I love your brownies, and I like the letters, but can you put all the letters for a week in one envelope, and no more brownies? And so she did, and things got better, and my relationship with my drill sergeants improved. Now, I didn't go to church, so when the other soldiers went to church, I tried once. I'd never gone to church a day in my life, so I thought, well, church should be better than detail, and so I went to church. I found I preferred detail to church, and so I asked the drill sergeants, you know, I don't want to go to church anymore, just give me work. And so on Sundays, I would be stuck with the detail, and I discovered that the drill sergeants would hide ice cream bars in this freezer near the pots and pans station, and no one liked pots and pans. So I would always volunteer for pots and pans. And then what I would do is, forgive me, Father, you'll think of this as stealing, but in the Army it's called securing. What I would do is I would secure the ice cream bars in a bucket full of ice, and then I would sneak it upstairs. And when soldiers would come back from church, I'd say, you shine my shoes for a week, you do my brass for a week, you make my bed for a week. And so a couple of ice cream bars got me out of a lot of work for the week. So it was just a few Sundays before graduating. In fact, we were done with training. Now we were just processing to where we'd go for our duty station. And I was doing my detail, waiting for an opportunity to secure some ice cream bars. And a friend, I'll never forget this guy, he was a traveling Irishman. I don't know if you know about the travelers, but he was a very resourceful guy. He was a good guy in basic training to have as a friend. And he came running in, and he said, Jones, your girlfriend's on the phone, and she's crying. So I ran out, and I answered the phone, and my girlfriend was crying like I have never heard a woman cry in my life. And the only way I can describe it to you is that her soul was crying. And she kept saying over and over and over again, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It wasn't me. And then her father said over the other line, Jason, I know your secret, and your secret's gone. I took Katie to get an abortion. As soon as he said the word abortion, a sergeant hung up the phone. I hit the sergeant. Another sergeant grabbed me by the neck, and I just kept crying. He killed my baby, he killed my baby, please call the police. They pulled me into my captain's office, and I was begging my captain, who was this big Army Ranger, began to cry, just watching me cry. And I said, sir, please call the police. My girlfriend's father killed my baby. He forced me to have an abortion. And the captain looked at me kind of surprised. He said, Private, why would I call the police? Don't you know abortion's legal? And you know I didn't. I was last in my class. I was an E1 private. But I knew that it was a baby. I'd never been to a church a day in my life. But I had 7th grade biology. I think I got a D. But I knew that it was a human life. But I did not know that it was legal to destroy the child in the womb. And I think my captain must have been a Christian and pro-life. He gave me he gave me the Cliff Notes explanation of Roe versus Wade and how abortion was legal. He gave me a roll of quarters. He said, Private, I want you to go to the PX. I don't want you to disturb the whole battalion. And you just talk till the last quarter's gone. And so I walked to the PX. And I remember as I walked to the PX, I was heartbroken at the thought of my girlfriend being hurt and I wasn't there to protect her. I was devastated at the thought that my child was destroyed. But I remember being profoundly shocked that this was all legal, and I couldn't comprehend it. I got to the PX, And I called Katie and we talked to the last quarter. And for those of you who remember payphones, the voice said, "You have 1 minute left. Please deposit change." I had no more quarters. So I didn't know what to do. I just wanted to comfort my girlfriend, and I didn't know what to say or do. And so I just said, "Katie, I promise you, if it takes me the rest of my life, I will end abortion for you and our daughter Jessica." Now, how did I know our baby was a girl? This was 6 months after conception. The abortionist said to Katie, after the abortion, "If you want to know, you are going to have a girl." So after basic training, I went to my duty station. I was stationed at Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. Now, not being raised a Christian, I didn't know anything about the pro-life movement or right to life. I didn't even know these expressions. But my mother was she is the type of person that she'll talk to anyone. And so the Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons used to come to our house all the time because my mother, they thought they were going to get a sale. They were never going to get a sale, but they'd always be there. And they'd be in my kitchen. I was 16 years old, and I tried to scandalize the Jehovah's Witnesses ladies by coming down to my tidy whities, Don't be in my kitchen if you don't want to see me in my underwear, I'm sorry. But what that taught me was you can just knock on people's doors and talk to them. So on my off days when I was at Schofield Barracks, every chance I got, I'd go to the plantation housing off base. And these were Filipino immigrants, but it was the only houses, the only doors I could get to, really. And so I'd go knocking on doors. The old Filipino immigrants would answer the door and say, "Bombay, holy boy, what you want?" And all I knew to say was, "Do you know abortion's legal?" That was my selling point. And then one day my captain called me and he said, "Private, are you going to the plantation neighborhoods, talking to the people about abortion?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "That's crazy. Why are you doing that? Stop doing that." But of course I kept doing it. And then one day I get a phone call from this irate woman. And she called my CQ desk and she said, "Are you going around telling people you represent our organization?" I said, "Miss, I've never heard of your organization. I've never told anyone I represent your organization." She said, "Well, I've heard from several people that you give them your phone number and you ask them to help you going on," because I'd ask people who agree with me, "Would you help me knock on doors?" And because I thought it was just me against the world, and I had 40 years I gave myself a 40-year plan to end abortion. And so I started knocking on doors, and I said, "Will you help me knock on doors?" And this one said, "You're going around telling people that you represent our organization. And I got this number from so-and-so." I said, "Oh, so-and-so, yeah," I knocked on their door and talked to them about abortion. She said, "Well, Hawaii Right to Life, that's what we do. We fight abortion." She was mad at me. I remember being so excited. "We have a group?" I was like, "More of us?" This was exciting. And then for me, that was the beginning. I started volunteering for Hawaii Right to Life. When I got out of the Army, I stayed in Hawaii and I went to the University of Hawaii where I founded, we had the Pro-Life Student Union, and I got involved in the Young Republicans and became chairman of the Young Republicans. And I tried to do everything I can. I made this 40-year plan. I said, "Okay, I'm going to end abortion. If only I care about abortion, how would I do it?" And I made a 40-year plan. I started with my goal and I worked backwards. I said, "It's going to take me 40 years. And I was hitting my marks. I had all these marks. And so at 28, I was in graduate school. I was chief of staff for a state representative. I was chairman of the Young Republicans. I was director of Hawaii Right to Life. I had a radio show with the Democrat mayor of Honolulu, this good Sicilian Democrat pro-life man. And so I was doing all these things, and then we couldn't even get partial birth abortion heard in committee. I remember being just devastated by this. And I called Dr. Alan Keyes. By the way, all this time I was an atheist, a hardcore atheist, because not only did I found the Pro-Life Student Union at the University of Hawaii, I also founded the Ayn Rand Club, which is probably seems strange to a lot of people. But I was a hardcore atheist, and I called Dr. Alan Keyes, and I said, "Dr. Keyes, what are we doing here? We're not making any progress." I said, we're trying to end abortion. I'm doing all I can, and we can't even get third trimester abortions that perform in the most gruesome way heard in committee. And Dr. Keyes said, "Jason, the darker the world becomes, the further your light will shine. Just pray." I said, "Oh, thank you, sir." Hung up. Never call that guy again. Who tells an atheist to pray? Really, that's bad. It's like telling a vegan to eat a hamburger to get rid of a headache. It's not useful information. But I remember I said a prayer. It was probably a strange prayer. I know God hears lots of strange prayers. But I think sometimes atheists pray in a way that's more honest than us. And at least I think when I was an atheist, I prayed in a way that was more honest than I do now. Because now I know someone's listening, and I couch what I say and how I say it. And I try to put it in the best way. But as an atheist, you just say it. And so after I got off the phone with Dr. Keyes, this was my prayer. I said, "God, I don't believe you exist. You can't be real. Because I'm not a good person, but I know killing babies is wrong, and I'm doing all I can, but I'm just one guy with like 3 elderly women in a little office in Honolulu. And what can we do? I said, if you're real, prove yourself to me. I need rich people, famous people, and powerful people to stand up. Where are they? Where are you? You're not real. And that was my prayer. And whenever I started getting frustrated, that was my prayer. And do you know what's really, that was in 1999, really. What seemed like a blink of an eye, strange things started to happen. Soon, for the first time, became open to the truth, became Catholic. My career just started, I didn't even realize where I was going, where I was being swept away. And next thing you know, I'm producing movies, and I'm running campaigns for the White House, and I'm finding myself around unusual people. And then just a couple of years ago, we were invited to Rome by the Holy Father, Eduardo and I, and Steve McAvee, the producer of The Passion of the Christ. And we were invited with a bunch of folks from all over the world, some of the most powerful men in the world. And there I was, and I wish I could say who these names are, but just some very powerful men. And so there I am at St. Peter's, and there's soundproof glass, and we've got earphones on, and people are from France and from Germany, and there's royalty in the room, and we're discussing how to fight the culture of death. And as I'm looking around at the room, and I got the producer of The Passion to the left of me, and I got Eduardo to the right of me, I heard God, I really did, whisper in my ear, "What do you need now, smart guy? What do you need now?" And that's when I realized that God has given us all of the grace we need to end abortion. He always has. We have just failed to correspond our life to that grace. And when we correspond our lives to the grace that God has given us, the culture of death will vanish in the blink of an eye. And one of the saddest days of my life was in November of 2008. I don't know what happened. You might remember. Something happened in November of 2008. And I was in Ohio, and I had founded a political action committee called Just One Judge. This election's about just one judge. And my high school girlfriend called me, and she said, "Jason, today's the day. We're going to win, and we're going to get our judge." And she's like, "I'm getting on a plane, and when I land, I'm going to call you, and you're going to give me the great news." And I wasn't excited either way, really. I didn't know even if the guy I was kind of hoping would win, even if he won, I couldn't count on him. The other guy seemed god-awful, and then the god-awful guy wins. And Katie landed, she called me, and I was devastated. I'd never been so devastated. I felt like 20 years of my work, missing one of my son's football seasons, running a political campaign. I looked at all that sacrifice, and I thought it was for nothing. And I went to my hotel room, which was a really dingy hotel room in Cleveland, because I was trying to save all my money for advertising, and so I got the cheapest hotel every night. And I went to my room, and I was so depressed I would have jumped out the window, but fortunately, I was on the second floor, and I didn't want to just break my ankle. So I pressed menu to watch a funny movie, and I couldn't find anything that was funny. But I found this movie, Baby's Mama. Has anyone seen Baby's Mama? It's not that funny. So. But, you know, the sadder you are, the more it's easier to laugh. I just laughed, and I fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up, and I was getting on the first flight to go home to see my family. And I had a book in my bag called Memory and Identity. It's the last book written by Pope John Paul the Great. And in this book, he recounts his struggle against the 3 great ideologies of evil in his life: Nazism, communism, and the culture of death. And our Holy Father said these 3 great ideologies of evil, the greatest evil of them all is the culture of death. Now that seems kind of cavalier for me to say, but this is from a man who lived under the boots of both the Nazis. He lived under Nazism and communism. And he said that the culture of death is a greater evil. And as I read this book, I thanked God, because I was flying back to my real job, which is making movies. And I looked, how did our Holy Father, how did he fight the culture of death? How did he fight Nazism? Well, when the Nazis ruled into Poland, they forbade Catholic and Polish expressions in art. And so what did he do? Secretly, with his friends, they put on plays that celebrated Polish and Catholic culture. They fought with beauty. They fought ugliness and evil with beauty, truth, and goodness through art. And I just thank God as I was on a plane, and I didn't feel helpless. And we know that the culture of death, through films that we watch, that undermines human dignity. It not only denies the transcendent moral order, it reverses it. What's good becomes evil. What's evil becomes good. It destroys our natural affection for our parents and parents for their children. And so that's when I realized that we as Catholics, we've had a strange relationship with the movie industry and with the mass media. We want the world to make movies for us. Well, that's kind of strange, really. Shouldn't we be making movies for the world? Why would we expect Hollywood studios to make films with our values? Would you want someone to demand that you make films with their values? So we have the responsibility to produce these films. That's what I came impressed with. And then I looked at how he fought the communists, and he looked to the church. And I was an atheist in the pro-life movement, and I remember one March for Life in Hawaii. I was there with the Knights of Columbus, and I said, man, these old guys and that woman standing on the moon, that's kind of strange. They're probably wigging people out. I said, if they just left it to us atheists, we'd end abortion. I never asked what atheists. It was me, really. I never met another atheist in the pro-life movement at the time. The gospel of life can only live within the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so we as Catholics must always be sure to express that. The gospel of life can never live outside of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The source of our dignity is that we are made in the image and likeness of God. But then I realized as I was flying back from Ohio, I'm a high school dropout from the south side of Chicago who had 2 kids by the time he was 19. And yet here I was running a PAC with a lot of money in this PAC that I raised in just a short period of time. And what a privilege it is to be an American. That we are responsible for the laws of our land. Each and every one of us. We are responsible. And when God judges us, He's not going to judge us by the standard in which He judged the Poles. Because we're responsible. He's going to judge us by the standard in which He judged kings and emperors and pharaohs. Because we're the sovereigns. But that's also great to know that if we participate, we can change the laws. I just came back from Mississippi. I've been in Mississippi. I'm going back to Mississippi. I'm taking the 5:30 a.m. flight tomorrow. I've been campaigning in Mississippi. The people of Mississippi have put on the ballot a referendum to protect the person from biological beginning to natural death. That's amazing. The Democrat Speaker of the House in Mississippi supports it. Republicans and Democrats in Mississippi support this, and I really, really think we're going to win. Father Richard Newhouse, when he was a young Lutheran minister, said that the greatest tragedy in American political history is that the pro-life flag is being planted in the Republican side of the debate. I think Father Newhouse is wrong. I think the greatest tragedy in American political history is that the pro-life flag is not planted firmly in both of our parties. And the truth is, there's one party that likes to put it out as law and order every couple of years. And there's another party that you have to get past barbed wire fence and dogs and snipers if you try to plant it. But we as Catholics can plant that flag. I want to share a story with you. I was in Darfur, Sudan, about 1.5 years ago. We were inspecting wells and delivering medicine. And if you remember, not last March, but the March before, it's when a bunch of aid workers were killed in Bashir. He went on one of his rages, and everyone was left. So me and my friend Brad were probably the only 2 white guys left in northern Sudan at the time. And we didn't ask Bashir's permission to be there, so when he asked us to leave, we figured we could stay. And we were inspecting wells, and we'd been there for 2 weeks. We were getting ready to leave. It was the day before we were going to leave. And I was walking from the SPLA camp to our camp, and a group of boys, about the age of about 10 to 2, started following me. Now I knew these boys because every morning when I would wake up, they'd look through the wooden slats of our fort at me. And when I go to sleep, they'd just be staring at me like, who's this big white gorilla? They just look at me. And so they were following me. And when I say these boys were poor, they were naked. They had no clothes, nothing. You know, one of the boys had like a string that I think was a t-shirt at one point. They're very poor. And they were marching in formation, following me. And I was with a Dinka evangelical pastor named Tito, and we were walking along. And then the oldest boy looked at me, and he stopped. So we stopped. He said, "Mister, take us where you going?" I said, take you where I'm going? I said, I'm going to my camp. You want to come and play soccer? He said, no, mister. Take us where you going? I said, I'm going to the camp. He goes, no. No mom, no dad. 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 Mister, we are good boys. Take us where you going. Take us to America. Now this broke my heart because I knew I couldn't take them home. So I took them under a tree and I asked Pastor Tito to translate because some of the boys only spoke Arabic. English is the official language of Sudan, but not everyone speaks it. And I said, there's nothing in the world I would like to do more than to bring you boys home with me. But my country will not let me, and it is not fair for your country, because you boys are going to grow up to be the great men that found a new, free Southern Sudan. And I'm going to pray with my family every day that God raises you up to be the founding fathers of South Sudan, that you'll be a great nation. And then Pastor Tito, he prayed like evangelicals pray. He prayed for like an hour. He's Dinka, he's like 6'7", very dark, but he looks like Billy Graham. It's weird. And he prays like Billy Graham. He doesn't even know who Billy Graham is. I call him the Billy Graham of Darfur. And he prayed. We walked back and we played soccer, and then I showed the boys Madagascar 2 on my little thing. This is the only kids film I could find in the airport, so I brought the Passion of the Christ to show while I was there, and I showed them Bella, which they probably confused them, and then I showed them Madagascar 2. And do you know, I felt better because I knew God could answer that prayer. And you know God can answer that prayer. But these boys are illiterate. They're war orphans. They barely have access to clean water and food. They have access to very limited medicine. But you know God can answer that prayer. But you know, the poverty is not the hard part. The hard part is that every moment of their life is crowded with the memory and the sadness of their parents and siblings being murdered by the Janjaweed before their very eyes. And how oppressive can that be? But yet we know that God can answer that prayer. And I want to share with you some exciting news. I know where these boys are. They're in a town called Josh. I know that they're safe. And this past July, for the first time since the reconquest of Spain, a Christian people that were being ruled by Islam have been liberated. And South Sudan now is the youngest republic in the world. God answers prayers. So when we look to the culture of death, and sometimes it seems overwhelming that the odds are stacked against us, but I remember the Soviet Union seemed overwhelming. The Nazis seemed overwhelming. But in the blink of an eye, they vanished. And this is why I thank God to being in this room. When David asked me to come, I said, of course. I knew that I'd be in Mississippi. We had movies in production and movies in theaters and the Mississippi campaign. But I do not believe that there is a more important institution in America than Ave Maria University. I do not. And I do not believe that there's a more important club at Ave Maria University than the Pro-Life Club. So when David asked me to come, I said, of course. Because I know the real heroes in the struggle against the culture of death, that the Carol Wojtyła's, the Dietrich von Hildebrandts, they're in this room right now. John was one of them. They're real heroes. And I know that I'll never keep my promise to my high school girlfriend. I cannot. No one person can keep that kind of promise. But I know that if just the people in this room and no one else cared about abortion in this country, that in our lifetime, if just the people in this room corresponded their life to the grace that God has given us, this university, for example, we would see the culture of death vanish in the blink of an eye. So I'd like to ask each and every one of you to take that flag of life that Father Newhouse was talking about, plant it in your families, plant it in your parish, plant it in your classrooms and your schools, because in our lifetime, we will see the end of legal abortion. I know. I know there will be Ave Maria University students that are leading the way. Thank you very much, and God bless you.